PhD student here in Politecnico, and I'm working with living organisms, try to produce interactive products. But in my thesis and in my previous work, I worked a lot with mycelium, so I will talk about it. Usually we associate fungi with the visible part, that is the fruiting body, but actually the biggest part of these organisms is underneath the ground, and it's called mycelium. Mycelium is an intricate net of hyphae. Hyphae are like the building block used by fungi to harvest all the nutrients from the ground. And mycelium is perfect to grow on wasted and on organic matter, like rotten wood, but also on discarded materials like cotton, hemp, or every kind of materials that contain cellulose, to produce a very light and white materials that could be used for very different purposes. In Italy, we have a very well-known company called Schim that has two branches. One is called Mogu, that is producing acoustic panels made of mycelium, cotton, and hemp. And these acoustic panels could be found in this 3D shape, but also in a new shape that is called Pluma. That is a very flat model that could be printed with some texture. So you can obtain very different aesthetics. Schim has another branches called Efea that is very famous now because it's producing the first coat made entirely with mycelium leather. Schim is one of the most famous company because succeed in bringing mycelium on a large scale, but actually mycelium is used mainly by designers or little studios like this one that is called Officina Corpuscoli, founded by Maurizio Montalti. It's a very famous studio in the Netherlands, and their goal is to produce and experiment with myceliums to produce fashion products, but also furniture products in a more experimental way, we can say. And this approach is used also by other designers like Sebastian Cox to produce home furniture like lamps. But also we can find mycelium paired with 3D printing, like in this case in which we have a structure made of 3D printed corn-based bioplastics inserted with mycelium that could grow inside. And talking about 3D printed, we can see also other studio like Blast Studio that are trying to produce a very big structures made of myceliums and waste of coffee cups. And the goal of the studio is to put this structure not only as aesthetic purpose, but also in a natural environment to actually help organisms grow on this structure. And finally, we can see mycelium used also in the architecture field, in which researchers are trying to produce bricks made of myceliums that could last, but also be very sustainable. So we saw that mycelium could be used in very different fields and very different scales, but why it is so positive to use as a material? For many reasons. First of all, mycelium could grow on a substrate made of waste. So we can connect it with the discourse of upcycle materials like cotton, hemp, or papers. And we can give new life to wastes thanks to myceliums that could pack together all these wastes to create new materials. Then it is easy to grow, do it yourself, to create not only customizable products, but also as prototyping materials that could, at the end of life, be usually disposed. Mycelium could be the perfect examples of biofabrication craft. because in the process of producing these products with mycelium, the designer needs to apply a very hands-on approach in which also needs to understand mycelium and the materials in all the phases, because unlike other classical materials used in craft, like wood or clay, mycelium is different because during the process you can see it actually grow. So to better produce this kind of materials and products, you need to understand its rhythms and its needs. And in doing so, designers have the possibility to develop a caring relationship with the material. To actually work in the best way with these living organisms, we have to work in a multidisciplinarity environment, in a teamwork made of biologists, biotechnologists, and chemists, like we are trying to do in the biodesign field nowadays. And to conclude, I want to highlight some of future perspectives and possibilities that mycelium could offer. Like, first of all, in the case study that we saw, mycelium is always inert. That it means that in the growing phase, it's alive, but then it has to be stabilized. But in the future, we could see responsive structures or living materials in which mycelium is alive and could respond to the stimuli or maybe also self-repair itself. And then I really like to think that in the future, the growing process would be very diffused and known by everyone. So it could be very used by every designers or also students to produce their own project or prototypes.